All right, so here we are yet again. Welcome to our REDFeather Mind, Body, Spirit live event. I am Christopher McClure, and today we have a special guest again. He's back, Von Braschler, who's most recently the author of Mysterious Messages from Beyond. Here it is. It's a really cool book, very different for us, so excited to talk about this. So we want to catch up today to learn more about this really interesting title and what's ahead. But first, a little background on Von. Von Braschler is a lifetime member of the International Theosophical Society with headquarters in ADR, India. He is the author of several books on consciousness development and a student of yoga. He has led workshops throughout the US and the UK and appeared on television and many radio shows. He spends much of his time in a cabin in the small island of San Juan near Anacortes, Washington, and otherwise lives in St. Paul, Minnesota. Wonderful to have you back for this. We were just talking, this is only the second time we've had someone for a Facebook Live twice. So you're a veteran now for this.
Hi, Chris. Actually, I never left. I've been on the site since we left, just sitting here, hoping we get back again.
Just waiting,
months and months waiting, yes.
Just twiddling your thumbs.
Yes.
Finally, you're waiting for it to come back.
I have no other life. Yes.
Now, are you in your cabin now, or are you in St. Paul?
I'm in Anacortes, so I take a little ferry from our little island to a slightly bigger island where I have a tiny little office in an artist studio building. So I'm the only guy here that can't even finger paint. So they said, "Are you artist?" And I said, "Yeah, but I can't do hair or paint."
Yeah, right, fine. Well, yeah, artist.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, a lot of things. You are a writer and a very accomplished writer too. I just finished your book last night, it's really fun. It's fun. Fun's not the word. I'm trying to find the right word for it, it is what I came up with. And I want to get into some of your background things a little bit. What I really came up with is hopeful. And when I finished, it's interesting. So a lot of these kind of books, you have paranormal kinds, because this kind of is the on the edge of paranormal and metaphysical and a little bit intertwined, with that, at least from my perspective.
Yeah.
And so, but some of those books really, are designed to just really freak you out, or just
frightening, dark.
All of these stories, and you actually intermix within, you have stories, you have exercises, how to communicate and things a little bit, but overall, I mean, the messages are like I said, hopeful, and it really gives someone, the opportunity to delve into a different area of metaphysics that maybe they don't think about, which is clairaudience, I would call it, that area kind of going in that direction. So even though there are some spooky things in here, overall, I think the title it's a hopeful title. It's a positive book, really, ultimately. So I think.
Well, thank you. I didn't want it to sound dark, but I wanted to kind of show the wide parameter of thought form projections that we hear. Because my first book with you, which was called Manifest, and using thought forms to create visualize change, was actually a book on how we can project and send thought forms. So all that I write about really is consciousness. I'm a student of Raja Yoga, and so I'm very interested in consciousness. I think everything is consciousness. I think that all of life is driven by consciousness. And this is intelligent energy within all of life, and it's within us. So if we can project thought forms outward, then we ought to be able to, if we have any skill at all at communication, be able to receive thought forms. Now, the thing is about these, they're mysterious messages from beyond because you can't see who's sending it. It's like there's not an angel sitting in front of you saying, "Hi, I'm an angel." But it might be an angel who's actually trying to communicate with you, or a spirit guide, or an ascended master teacher. It could be a deceased relative, saying, "Goodbye, I miss you, I love you, thanks." It could be a lost pet. It could be someone far, far away yelling help as loud as they can telepathically. So if you want to call this a book about telepathy, that's fine. It is the unseen messengers who try to communicate directly with us personally, and how we should learn to listen. The most important thing, I think, is the most important thing in life is learning to listen. Because if you can learn to listen, you can learn.
Mm-hmm. No, you're exactly right. This really, as you're saying that, it did strike me that this is kind of like a bookend to your manifest book. Then really, because as you're saying, is one is projecting thought forms, and this is receiving, reception of that, and much in a similar pattern. You throughout this book, it's actually a really good mixture of stories and also exercises as well, and different examples of different kinds of reception and how that has happened, the circumstances behind the reception of different different sounds. Or there's an interesting thing here about I wanted to ask you about kind of like the difference between like internal and external hearing. I know we didn't talk about that.
Yeah. So I go into this in some detail in this book. I did a research of the King James version of the Bible, and I can tell you that even in the Old Testament, the Jewish Bible, in the New Testament as well, there are many. There's about 36 I could find references to basically saying the same thing. You have ears yet you hear not. You have eyes yet you see not. So if you have ears and you hear not, it indicates that we're talking about non-physical hearing. It is hearing within you. It is when you're walking out in the woods and someone calls out your name. You say, well, that I heard that, but it seemed like it was inside my head. Or suddenly someone, you get a message inside your head when you're walking or waking up in the morning or when you're lost. And sometimes it's someone saying, hey, and sometimes it's someone shouting out encouragement. Sometimes it's someone shouting out directions to you, and it could change your life if you learn to listen. I had a teacher who said the most important thing to do is to listen. And he told me this 3 times, and he said, there are 3 things I want you to learn, Vaughn. He said, do you want to write them down? He said, no, I'll remember. And he said, good. He said, first thing is listen. The second thing is listen. And the third thing is listen. So he wrote a book called Listen, Listen, Listen. That was my teacher. And it's he's right.
Right. Now, is that Louis Gittner or Louis Gittner?
Yeah, Louis Gittner.
Louis Gittner. Right. So no, it's really all about listening. And speaking of that, you highlight a lot of different examples of the listening, the circumstances. One that I was fascinating to me, and I want to talk to you about it, which was one where you were hearing this internal music, and you were just outside, and you had like a whole radio station playing for a certain period of time, and what was that?
It's happened a couple of times to me, and I've talked to a lot of people who have similar experiences. So I know I'm not totally abnormal. I'm just maybe a certain subset. So I was in my backyard and I was listening to what sounded like a radio station.
Right.
They never identified themselves, but they kept playing songs, and then they play another song. Then they play another. They never had news or anything like that. It was just going on and on and on. And it just went on and on and on. And as long as I could focus my attention on listening, I could hear it. But if I would let my attention wane and start looking at things, then it would be gone. The other time was I was living on Mount Hood in Oregon. I was walking through the woods. And I think this happens a lot to people when they're out in the woods or alone. Just suddenly, there's nobody there. There's nothing there. You're completely alone. I'm walking along the Salmon River in a very wooded area on the mountain. And I start hearing a flute. It's beautiful. It's flute. And I'm thinking like, this is panpipes. The only thing I've heard very little of flute playing that sounded like this. It was like a lute. It was beautiful. It was just beautiful. And I walked all the way through the woods, like driven to find the source. And I realized that it was coming inside me. It was not a physical location anywhere in the woods. And I realized that I was undoubtedly the only one hearing it, even though I was the only one there. It was happening inside my head, because if I would focus my attention on it, I could tune it in and increase the volume. And if I started to look around, the volume would subside. And it went on for a long time.
That's really a story, I can't. When I read that particular story, which is in the book, it just transported me back to pagan eras where this was you referencing Pan and the music of the forest, and it seems as though a lot of the circumstances do happen in nature. Course,
Yes.
And go ahead. So that's a consistency throughout, and certain ways or even methods are recommended, to be in nature to really be able to hear to hear the messages that are coming through.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, people think we're just dropped here on this earth without any program or instructions. We're totally clueless. Like, who am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going? What's it all about? How do I fit in the scheme of things? But it's like, look around you. It's like everywhere in nature there are clues as to how it all works. Nature is spirit. Spirit is nature.
I completely agree. Yeah. So one of the methods was it was interesting. You went, one of your stories was about, I forget where you said you were working at the time, and you go into it's your life story. It like plops in different area that happened this time, which is really makes it very personal and intriguing, and so I guess you were getting these phone calls from an Indian gentleman or something. A couple times, and saying, come with me on my trip to India, and it didn't happen. So what was that? How did that go? What was it?
It was very life-changing. I had gone to work at the national headquarters of the Theosophical Society in Wheaton, Illinois, gotcha. and I had just taken over in the publications department from a man who pretty much started it. He was very elderly, and so I'm sitting up in what was his old office, and I get these phone calls. The first one was from what?
They just finished story. Okay. You never know. So his mission, I believe, this is something where comes at his calls, very adamant. Yeah. So basically, he said, "Oh, this is real good." However, it's bookstore down there. I think it was called the Quest Bookshop. I believe which I believe is still in operation actually. And so he had gone in there. He wanted to look for books on deep meditation. So he was moved to do this. And so essentially, what he did is he went to the back of he was pointing to the back of the store. And so he went to this area and he found this book. He saw a book that was actually upside down, was face down. And so he picked the book up. And so essentially he turned it over, and it was by an Indian writer who was actually known for his lightning tours of India. And so he utilized this book then to develop a really interesting style of being able to listen through nature. And so that was one of the stories that's highlighted in this book. And so he kind of so throughout the text here is a good ebb and flow of different stories. Also, too, there are different, then with the story then is reinforced as to the how or the method then that Vaughn used, and he would, and so throughout he kind of develops his own style of listening to these messages from beyond, the mysterious messages from beyond. So what we'll do is we'll take a pause here. Hopefully we'll be able to get back on. Please stay tuned, and hopefully we'll be back in a little bit. If not, what we'll be doing is we'll be recording a Zoom call, a video, and then we will put this up on our Facebook if we don't return here shortly. So thanks for tuning in for now. Perhaps see you soon.